Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tracing a pretty wild thread, this fascinating, almost invisible web of extraction and control that runs through 4 completely different domains of our world. We're going to look at how unseen forces operate at literally every level of our reality. By pulling from some incredibly diverse source materials, we can see this one massive overlapping pattern. We'll start with the systems that govern entire nations and zoom all the way down into the quietest corners of your own mind. Really, this whole thing is about what's being harvested from you, and most importantly, how you can actually reclaim it.
To get a grip on this mind-expanding journey, we're breaking it down into 4 main areas. First, the physical harvest. Second, the digital surveillance net. Third, hacking the belief doorway. And finally, tuning your inner voice. So we'll kick things off with some undeniable geopolitical realities and slowly zoom all the way into the deeply personal landscape of the human mind.
All right, part 1, the physical harvest. Geopolitics and the extraction of the body. We've got to begin right here in the physical world, looking at some truly alarming reports that were presented at the International Congress on Law and Mental Health. They detailed an industrial-scale system operating in China. And look, this isn't some dystopian sci-fi fiction. According to the source material, this is a highly organized state-level apparatus completely focused on the forced organ harvesting of prisoners of conscience. The sheer scale of this, it's honestly staggering. Researchers and investigators estimate that this forced organ harvesting industry in China is worth an astonishing $9 billion a year. $9 billion! That massive financial figure is driven by a system where tens of thousands of transplant surgeries are allegedly performed every single year, vastly exceeding their official donor numbers. And to put that into perspective, the source points out that inexplicably short wait times, we're talking sometimes just 2 weeks for a matching organ, are a massive, massive red flag.
The actual mechanics of how this inventory is managed are just chilling. According to witnesses cited in the source material, prisoners of conscience receive these pink bracelets shortly before disappearing, and they're given specifically to individuals in their late 20s. Why? Because that marks them as premium biological inventory. That is the exact age when the human body hits peak maturity, right before any natural decline begins. This infrastructure didn't just pop up overnight. It evolved rapidly. It actually started back in 1999 by targeting Falun Gong practitioners, who, were ideal targets because of their extremely healthy lifestyles. Later, it expanded to the Uyghur population in Xinjiang. The source details how this expansion resulted in the mandatory DNA sampling of 15 million people. 15 million, basically creating a massive living donor bank. They even go as far as marketing halal transplants internationally, setting up fast processing lanes at major regional airports to expedite the whole thing. Meanwhile, as the source notes, the international community's legislative response to all this, it's remained painfully slow and, honestly, largely toothless.
Moving on to part 2, the digital surveillance net, normalizing the end of privacy. Shifting gears from the physical harvesting of bodies, let's take a look at the unseen digital nets currently cast over our daily communications in the European Union. While the extraction of the physical body is a visceral horror, the extraction of our private data operates totally quietly, right in the background of our everyday lives.
Take a look at this bizarre vote tally from July 2026 regarding chat control. If you're not familiar, chat control is an EU regulation that basically allows massive tech companies to scan your private messages for illegal content. Now, get this, more members of the European Parliament actually voted against renewing chat control than for it. The tally was 314 against, 276 for. Yet, through a super rare urgency procedure pushed through in the final sitting right before summer recess, it passed anyway. No way, right? But it did.
The progression of this legislation really shows a clear circumvention of individual choice. So the current version, Chat Control 1.0, makes message scanning voluntary for the tech companies, but notably, it's never voluntary for you, the user. It allows these massive platforms to voluntarily scan your private messages without you having any way to opt out. And as the source heavily emphasizes, this is laying the exact rails for a mandatory encrypted device scanning system known as Chat Control 2.0. That future version would implement client-side scanning directly on your phone or laptop, scanning your stuff before you even hit send.
You might be wondering, does this system actually catch new criminals distributing child sexual abuse material, or CSAM? Well, Meta's own EU data reveals that 99% of the flagged content is already known material, Basically, the system mostly just recycles old findings, and shockingly, it wrongly flags teenagers who are just sharing images of their own lives. This perfectly illustrates the source's claim that this kind of mass surveillance doesn't necessarily solve the core problem. Instead, it just normalizes a watched, self-editing public. It literally extracts our right to an unobserved inner life. Having seen how physical resources and digital data are harvested by geopolitical and tech systems, the source material asks us to consider a much more esoteric possibility. We're going to zoom way in now, into the realm of human consciousness itself. What if, and just hear me out, what if there are forces that feed not on our bodies or our data, but on our very perception of reality? Guard the gate of your own belief. This striking quote serves as our bridge into the metaphysical. It suggests that human belief itself is a resource, a tangible energy that unseen forces are actively attempting to extract. The source posits that the absolute most practical spiritual instruction you can have today is to be incredibly careful about what you choose to believe, because your belief, it literally gives shape to the unseen. Which brings us to part 3, hacking the belief doorway, the paranormal interface. In this section, paranormal researchers report findings that completely reorganize how we understand entities, ghosts, and UFOs. The source material challenges those classic ideas of extraterrestrials or, traditional demons, and proposes something much stranger about the nature of our interactions with the unknown.
Consider this core theory from the text. Researchers were observing a house where multiple human witnesses claimed they saw a grieving woman in white, but when they pointed an objective camera lens at the exact same spot, it captured only a single ball of light. Why? Well, a camera lens is an impartial observer. It just sees raw energy. Human consciousness, however, supplies the raw material, our fears, our memories, our expectations. The entity uses that to build a relatable, comfortable mask. So the ghost, the alien, the angel, they might just be the interface.
The author suggests these things are not visitors from distant planets, but rather overlapping intelligences that they call ultra-terrestrials. Basically, an intelligence already present with us that takes whatever form the witness is primed to accept. They adjust to our awareness in order to hack our belief. And this is where it gets truly bizarre. These manifestations range from appearing as religious figures or even cartoon characters, all the way to a Dybbuk spirit. That's a spirit claimed by billionaire Leslie Wexner, who publicly stated that this entity drove his relentless business success. It's like the entity just puts on the costume that the human mind expects to see. The big implication here is that empowering the mask empowers whatever's wearing it. Stanford research actually backs up the idea that focused human intention can condition physical matter. So the phenomenon isn't hacking physical reality, it's hacking your belief, because your attention and your belief are the actual resources being harvested. This makes strict discernment absolutely vital when navigating these unseen realms. Now, the source is clear that not all contact is parasitic, but you have to ask yourself, what is wearing the mask and why exactly does it want your attention? Okay, final section. Tuning your inner voice, reclaiming your sovereignty. If our bodies, our data, and our very beliefs are constant targets for extraction, how on earth do we protect ourselves? How do we navigate a world absolutely filled with physical, digital, and metaphysical manipulation? Well, the answer lies in tuning into the one frequency that cannot be hacked, your true inner voice. You've really got to learn to differentiate your two internal voices. On one side, you have the ego. The ego is loud, it operates on panic, expectation, and this desperate need for validation. It constantly screams, I need a decision right now. On the other side, you have the higher self. The higher self operates with a wide aperture. It offers steady, unforced clarity. It doesn't use fear or flattery to get your attention, and it certainly doesn't need anyone else to validate it. The real challenge is just getting quiet enough to actually hear it. The source makes a super fascinating distinction here, one that gets confused in spiritual circles all the time. The soul is the traveler. It carries your emotional baggage, your grief, the historical wounds of lifetimes, but the higher self is different. It doesn't carry that residue. Think of it like this. The higher self just watches the maze from above and simply points toward the exit. It never asks, why is this happening to me? It just quietly tells you what the experience is actually for. So, how do we tune in? The explainer notes that by practicing these 3 practical steps, you can clear out all that mental static. Step 1, intuitive listening. This means catching that initial gut instinct in the first 10 seconds, right before your loud, logical ego jumps in to second guess it. Step 2, automatic writing. Literally putting pen to paper without editing.
This bypasses the ego's annoying tendency to write long, highly justified essays. And finally, step 3, meditation. Not to induce crazy visions or anything, but simply to silence the noise so the underlying signal of your higher self can actually be heard loud and clear.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you to ponder this vital question. Will you let your resources be harvested, or will you use discernment to reclaim your sovereignty? We've seen how extraction works on this massive geopolitical scale, for the silent scanning of our digital lives, and even through the hijacking of our spiritual beliefs by unseen entities. But recognizing these forces and learning to quiet the internal panic of your own ego might just be the ultimate act of reclaiming your own mind. When you guard the gate of your belief and tune into that quiet, steady, higher self, you become a sovereign individual, someone that cannot be so easily harvested. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey. Keep questioning and stay sovereign.
You've been listening to the Weaving the LightNet TLDR. To explore more about any of these topics, visit lightnet.co.uk or listen to the full deep dive podcast episode linked below. Give the video a like, share this episode with others who would appreciate it, and subscribe to join us next week as we continue weaving the web of planetary consciousness together. Stay sovereign.